So what we're starting on with Chapter 8 is a chapter called, called Profit Planning. And obviously what we've been doing in this class is a lot of internal managerial work using data to plan and control and strategize and develop new methods of improving the triple bottom line in your company, right? People, planet, profit, right? And I'm trying to talk a little bit about triple bottom line, even though your book really only has like 3 pages on corporate social responsibility. It's actually quite a big deal anymore. One of the things that you do as part of that process is budget. Who does a monthly household budget?
That's awesome.
That is not true in all households, I can guarantee you that. Who writes their budget out on a piece of paper or a spreadsheet? Okay, some of you. So just for giggles, not to pick on you, but what do you do if you don't write your budget out? How do you kind of keep track of where you're at? Okay. Uh-huh. So you don't have unexpected expenses show up, or how do you deal with that? So you have some backbone that you can turn to in time of unexpected crises. Yeah. So basically what a budget does, and a lot of people think in a business that it's just about, saying, okay, well, let's just talk about what's going to happen next year. But it's much more holistic than that, not to overuse that word, but it's very much bigger picture stuff. How about for those of you that do a written budget every month? Certainly we have to meet our bills, but what about when you're going to save for a down payment on a scooter or a car, or you want to take your child on that dream vacation, or you need a new furnace, something a lot less sexy but still very expensive, right? You've defined some goals and objectives, and you're putting an extra $75 a month away for that, right? So whether it's you and your partner, or it's a company of 55,000 employees, it helps you to collectively define, what are we trying to do? Where are we trying to get to? And sometimes, probably for many of you as students, that is, hold on to my apartment, keep my heat turned on, and eat. It might be pretty simple. But as you grow, whether it's a business or an individual or a family, you're probably going to have some things that you want to attain out there, right? So defining your goals and objectives. It also allows you to talk amongst yourselves in a business. So if you've got one of these budgetary systems where it's top down, and this is super old school, where the executive management team gets together and goes, our profits, we want our profits to go up 12% next year because then our bonuses, go up 20%, which was very much old school. And then I come and tell all you guys, okay, make that happen. Turns out research showed that was not a big incentivizer for employees. How you incent your employees is you get them communicating and involved and coordinated and part of this whole process, right? So I want input from you. Oh, you work down on the line? Oh, you run the procurement's warehouse? Oh, you process AP? Tell me what's going on in your day-to-day task-based world. And how can we make it easier for you? Where don't you have enough resources to do your job, and where do you see waste? And hey, by the way, if some of your ideas work, you might get 8% of that savings back on your paycheck, right? So it helps to coordinate people within your organization. Think about and plan for the future. Obviously, how do you allocate resources? And this is the big one on the bottom, uncovering potential bottlenecks. You said month after month after month, writing car repair checks for a 30-year-old rig. At some point, you're going to save what in your household? It's really, we probably have to bite the bullet, buy a new car, and make a car payment, right? So it's exact same equivalent in a business. If they've got a manufacturing line that's chronically breaking down or isn't up to speed, or is putting out a low quality product where they have a lot of QC or rework costs, it might be time to to uncover this bottleneck and move forward. Okay, so the big thing here with budgeting, and again, this is kind of it seems very obvious, but wasn't always so. Responsibility accounting. You can only hold me responsible for items that I can control in my job, and budgeting helps do that. Let me give you an example, and it enables organizations to react quickly. What is that saying? It's saying that, say that Sarah's my sales manager and Monica's my production manager, and Sarah goes out, her compensation is based on sales. So what's she going to want to do? She's going to want to push units out the door. But Monica's like, wait a second, I don't have capacity unless I work my people overtime. And that's going to reflect poorly on me because my costs are going to skyrocket, right? And we all know when your direct labor skyrockets, your contribution margin falls, all of a sudden the break even goes up. But Sarah's off here in La La Land going, I got a big fat commission check. Is that the best for the company? No. How do you align the values and goals so that Monica and Sarah are both working for the best of the company? And that happens through the budget process and the use of responsibility accounting. We've been told recently here by the legislature that part of our resource allocation as Missoula College is going to be based on our number of graduates. So that went from the legislature to the Board of Regents to our dean to our department chairs and shows up on my desk. So how many of you I'm using that term very loosely, because obviously you have a lot of professors, will be reflected on how much, not my direct paycheck, but how much is allocated to the accounting tech program. Is that a good incentive? Does that provoke positive behavior in me? You don't think I'm going to teach better?
Well, it has not necessarily you, but there's the potential that you might just have people or let it go for the test.
Oh my gosh. What I'm going to do is you guys, you know what? You're all good. You all have 70%. Show up, don't show up. I could give a hoot. Okay. Anybody that knows me knows that will never happen, so that was fun for 20 seconds to think about. But,
Doesn't mean Megan.
go ahead.
With that, okay, for instance, I'm only taking one class, I'm not shooting for a degree.
Right. You would reflect very poorly. I wouldn't want you. When you emailed me this summer, I would have said, oh, this isn't for you.
Yeah.
Because you would have reflected poorly on my performance.
Yeah, 'cause I'm not
Great
gonna
example.
graduate.
Great example. You guys coming over from the other campus? Not working for me, sorry. Class is full. It provokes aberrant behavior or behavior that's not desirable. If we're a nonprofit, what we're supposed to do is provide a service to our constituents, which are you, our students. They shouldn't really be able to hold me responsible for variables outside of my control. Or you've got health issues and you've got to drop out, and you've got a sick kid and you've got to drop out or withdraw. That all reflects on me.
But at the same time, some programs, this may give them the incentive to really start building their program and working on those internships a little more. I hate internships.
Okay.
By the way, worked in the registrar's office.
So you think it is a good incentive?
I think there is a good and bad side to it. I mean,
And how do you unpack that one from the other?
you can't. And I mean,
That's
it'd be
why
nice
you
to
have
weigh
to think
that.
about this so carefully during the budgeting process and saying, what are you being rewarded on? Are these numbers realistic? So everybody's got to graduate 15% more students by 2020. I mean, I'm just making that up. Okay? Sounds valid. We're having enrollment problems at this university. Let's be honest. Sounds super valid. Is that across the board a reasonable expectation? Of course not. Some programs are underperforming. This particular program rolls along 10 to 15 people a year like clockwork. I've been here 22 years and it's never deviated from those numbers. I don't think there's another huge untapped market out there. I'd be concerned if there's only 3 of you sitting in the classroom. So just rolling down the level ground. My point is, and I'm using this example, to talk about as we move into budgeting, we're going to be doing tons and tons of numbers and crunching numbers, but I want you to be thinking in the background. Each and every one of these budgets are tied in to a department, a person, some unit or segment of the organization that is going to be held responsible for this in a way that they can ultimately impact it. So I'm kind of spending a little time really, beating a dead horse here so that that's always in your background as you start looking at this, because this chapter is full of numbers, so many numbers, but they're all common sense models. If you're trying to get your sales forecast, what dollar amount are you going to sell next year? What are you going to multiply by what? I want to know how many millions of dollars I'm going to sell in tuition, tuition revenue next year. I'm going to take what by what? Students times tuition, right? That gets a little more complicated than that, but FTE times, there's some out of state and some in state and some international, so you kind of got to multi-product it, right? These are all very straightforward models. You're not going to be learning any convoluted numbers. Okay, how do you choose your budget period? How often do you guys budget? You do it every month in your house? Why do you do it every month? Oh, sorry. Okay, you're eating. Why do you do it every month? Do you budget?
My wife.
Okay. Why does she budget every month?
Probably because you're making a monthly income.
That's how often your revenues come in, right? What if you budgeted every quarter as a household? Would that work for you?
Well, not for electricity going
Right, so you've got a lot of monthly expenses, but so do businesses, and businesses oftentimes don't budget monthly. They budget quarterly or sometimes even annually. Huh? So they've got less risk because they've got more working capital. In America, we call those credit cards. So less risk, but also in my individual household, my bills don't stay the same every month. My life insurance comes due in October, and that's a big chunk of change out the door. And I pay my property taxes twice a year, and those are big chunks of change out the door, right? A lot of things stay the same, but a lot, Christmas, summer vacation, right?
But don't you plan for that like all year long?
I do. I put money every month into another account so that when I have to pay those bills, I'm just like, oh, move it over, write the check, no worries.
Right, but you budget every month so you know what's coming out and remember to take it out.
Right, exactly.
But
I budget.
Go ahead.
yeah, but even if you do that, because I do that for our business,
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that something unexpected can't happen. I mean,
certainly,
we're looking at replacing a turbocharger now, and
certainly.
that, even though we've been putting money aside.
Sure.
and whatnot, you can't.
No, you can't save for everything, but what you do have to do is just what Caleb said, you have to have access to working capital. And for many of us, in Hannah's case, I have a savings account. Ideally, they tell us we're supposed to have 6 months of living expenses in our savings, right?
Yeah.
Sweet. I wish I could piece together 2 paychecks in my savings. But technically that's where that's supposed to come from. Otherwise you have to have access to short-term credit or working capital.
What kind of do review my budget every month to go through stuff I spend money on that I should?
Excellent. Jess says she budgets every month because it helps her go through and see what the heck she did last month. Now let me just see a show of hands. How many of you put your monthly checks or debit card transactions or however you run your budget into some sort of piece of software so you can see what you spent? So Tirsa, do you do like Quicken or QuickBooks? You use Excel. So when you're done, when September closes today, you can sit and go, oh gosh, I spent $183 last month on clothes, an X amount on food, and I really need to rein this in because I barely made my rent. Businesses do that too. So their operating budgets are set for time periods that usually coordinate to the fiscal year. So, you're going to do a budget for a whole year, but you're going to break it into small bits and pieces. This is what I do, and this is what I did as controller of the 2 businesses that I was controller of. It's what my husband does. He's the controller of the youth homes. Continuous budget. So the minute that September's done, I budget for September 2016. So my Excel spreadsheet always goes out 12 months into the future. Why is that beneficial? I'm sitting right now, within the next week, I will budget for my household expenses and revenues for September of 2016. Why do I want to do that? But what do I know right now that I'm probably not going to remember next September? Oh my gosh, I had to blow out my sprinklers this month. That was $80. I'm not going to remember that. I can remember all those little weird things that I have to do. I mean, you can, but are you gonna? So he's good with that. Most companies, or a lot of companies, will do a continuous budget because it is first and foremost in their mind right then when September closes out what they have to budget for next September. So that's called continuous budgeting.
Continuous budgeting, that's where they're gonna do the projections, right?
Yes.
On account of, because like, say,
Okay. Yes.
if I do like I bought, I'm in charge of buying all the office supplies.
Yeah.
But what I paid 2 years ago for paper and what I'm paying now are
Sure.
like astronomically
Excellent.
different.
Excellent point. Okay, so what you're talking about, you probably don't know the technical words, but that was the exact next thing I was going to explain. So no, you're fine. Great point. Continuous budgeting is what we just talked about. I think that has got to be used in connection with some sort of obviously incremental changes. In other words, next September, am I going to be paying for fossil fuels what I am today? Higher or lower? What's happening to oil as we speak? It's going lower, lower, lower. Did you see they just shut down the Arctic drilling? Royal Shell just announced they're shutting down Arctic drilling. Unbelievable. I'm like,
No, you look so happy when you were saying that.
well, they didn't get into the Arctic Wildlife Refuge, and that area, at least for now, is going to remain pristine. Part of that's because the cost of oil is depleted. Okay, but my point is you take your budget for September and you're budgeting next year, you've got to make incremental adjustments for what you think is going to go up a couple of percentage points, what might go down a couple of percentage points. So I'm not just going to take that same blow out the sprinklers number in all my commercial buildings if I'm a landlord, and put that number next September. I'm going to probably add 3% on, because let's be honest, my landscaper goes up about 3% a year. Okay? Versus, so you with me? So this is what I think is the way to go. Zero-based budgeting, you guys, is you have to recreate your entire budget from ground up every year. You don't get to start with last year's numbers. What do you think about that?
That's not very informative.
Why don't you think it's informative?
I mean, like you said, I'm not sure if I remember what I paid for gas. I don't even remember what I paid for gas last week.
Right. Okay. So you're saying I'm not going to be able to recreate this. That's stupid. Okay, Jake.
I think it'd probably be more accurate. I mean, it might be, it takes longer.
Oh, it's much more labor intensive.
Much more tedious, but since you're using this year's numbers, I mean, adjust it.
The theory is that if you just pull last year's numbers and adjust, that if you've got fluff built in or fat built in, it stays there and rolls from year to year. So a lot of, particularly nonprofit organizations, are now requiring zero-based budgeting. I'm going to show you one other quick thing and give you a few things to do for while I'm gone. Go ahead.
With zero-based budgeting, how would you be able to tell if your income and all your expenses cut from one year to the next if you're not using any of your prior year income?
You could still do trending. You could still do trending. Okay, so what did I want to show you? Oh, I know what I wanted to show you. So we're going to be doing all of our budgets. How long do I have? 1 minute. We're going to be doing all of our budgets in Excel. What I want you to do for Friday is go into Excel and make sure that you remember how to write formulas based on assumptions. And maybe it wasn't called that in your Excel class. What am I talking about? I'm talking about referring to cells that contain the raw data. In other words, no. In other words, my sales per unit, selling price per unit is $19.58. What's the other thing I want to know for a sales forecast? No, for sales, just pure sales. What else do I need to know?
Cost of goods sold,
No, I just want to get my sales number.
numbers.
How many how many units do I think I'm going to sell? Percentage increase per quarter, I think I'm going to increase my sales 2.8% per quarter. Okay? So what am I doing here then? Uh-huh. But help me, I don't have time to do all this, but help me then write a formula to get my sales for January through March. What do I start a formula with? Equals, then what? Start selecting my cells. 1958. Am I going to be able to take this cell and carry it across? No. Why not? I have to do what with it? What's it called? Absolute value it. Absolutely. So I think F4 does that. Times 10,000 units. Oops. Great. Why did I do it this way, you guys? Why didn't I just go in and write in the thing equals 10,000 times 19.58?
Because if it changes,
Exactly. So I don't have time to carry this across. But what if you come into me and you're my sales manager and you go, oh, Lisa, it's not going to be 2.8. It's going to be 3.69. Boom. Oh, what just happened there? Oh, because I have an increase. Sorry. It's not going to be 10,000. It's going to be 92.58. Boom. It changes this number, and if I'd had time to finish it, it would have changed everything across. So you have to put all your data assumptions carefully labeled, and then write your formulas in here. Okay, so I'm not here on Friday. I'm not here on Monday. You know that. So I'm not going to see you until a week from today. But what I would like you to do for next Wednesday is go on to Moodle. You guys are like, holy shit, are we not done with this class? It's 5 after. Okay. And go into the supplemental master budgeting problem, which we're going to use to go through this whole unit. And set up your sales forecast for the 2 products this company sells. Do not try and put them together. These are 2 different spreadsheets. Well, it's one spreadsheet with 2 worksheets. Sales, supplemental, C8 master budgeting problem. Set up on Excel 2 worksheets with your sales forecasts for the 2 products this company sells. And you'll see this when you go in. Okay, it's not graded. It's just we're going to be working through this. Okay, thanks for your hard work. Sorry that I went over.